Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. After the public argument that Jesus had with the Pharisees about the ceremonial washing, Jesus wanted to take a few minutes and help the rest of the crowd understand what he was trying to teach them. And then he has a private time with the disciples. In Mark chapter 7, verses 14 to 23, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, second edition, it says, "Then Jesus called to the crowd to come and hear. All of you listen," he said, "and try to understand. It's not what goes into your body that defiles you. You're defiled by what comes from your heart." Then Jesus went into a house to get away from the crowd, and his disciples asked him what he meant by the parable he had just used. "Don't you understand either?" he asked. "Can't you see that the food you put into your body cannot defile you? Food doesn't go into your heart, but only passes through the stomach and then goes into the sewer." By saying this, he declared that every kind of food is acceptable in God's eyes. And then he added, "It's what comes from inside that defiles you. For from within, out of a person's heart, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, lustful desires, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All of these vile things come from within. They are what defile you." It's interesting what he told the people. He told them to listen and understand and try to understand. You know, that's pretty good advice in any conversation, to listen and try to understand. That's pretty good advice for any sermon you listen to or any teaching you attend. Listen and try to understand. It's good advice. He calls the crowd to do that. And then he tells them, it's not what goes into your body that defiles you. You're defiled by what comes from your heart. He explains it to the disciples. You can eat whatever you want to. All that happens to what you eat is it goes through your stomach, down your belly, and out the backside and into the sewer. He said it just passes through. It's not hanging around. It doesn't do any defiling of you. What defiles you, he said, comes from your heart. When he goes inside, the disciples ask him for further clarification. And he explains again, food just passes through. But vile actions and vile thoughts come from vile hearts. And that's what defiles you. He's got quite a list here. He first starts off with evil thoughts. It starts in the head. Our biggest problem is always between our ears. Sexual immorality. That's always up there. It's important to him. Sexual purity and keeping our vows is important to Jesus. Theft. Well, nobody likes anything being stolen. God's principle is that we have private property ownership, and we ought to respect that for others. Certainly murder. Every culture recognizes that as wrong. Adultery. Our vows mean something. We ought to keep them. Greed. Again, the personal property rights that belongs to somebody else, we shouldn't be wanting it. Wickedness. That's kind of a general catch-all term. Deceit. Ain't nobody likes a liar. And that certainly defiles us if we're deceitful. Lustful desires. Again, we need to let other folks have their things and us not keep lusting after things that aren't ours, that we shouldn't have. There's stuff that's not ours, and we ought to respect that. There's people that are not ours, and we ought to respect that. Envy. Again, that tremendous desire to want what others have. That's what he's talking about, envy. And personal property rights, again, are so important. Stop wanting what belongs to others. and being jealous and envious because somebody else has something you don't have. Slander. It's when you talking bad about somebody else. They don't need you talking bad about them. They got their things, you got your things. Pride. Oh, such a difficult one to deal with. And foolishness. One of the things Scripture says is we ought to grow out of foolishness. And a lot of folks struggle with that. He says all of these vile things come from within. That's what's in your heart. And that's what defiles you. It's important that we have clean thoughts and choose to do clean things this week. May your thoughts be clean. God bless you.